Good morning. We conclude the series I've been meaning to ask today. And the theme for today is where do we go from here? And our scripture is from the book of Ruth. Before I read the scripture, I wanted to say just a little bit about the book here. It is the placement in chronological order is it begins before the end of the book of Judges. Um, and it ends with the kingdom of David. Uh, are the settings there, are the reference points, I guess is what I want to say. Um, it is a story that has many layers in it. It's a story within a story, in that as you comprehend how it fits in with history, then you see that it's a story within the larger story of God's interaction with mankind. And I think that's all I wanted to say as background before reading the scripture. During the days when judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. A man with his wife and 2 sons went from Bethlehem of Judea to dwell in the territory of Moab. The name of that man was Elimelech. The name of his wife was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephraimites from Bethlehem in Judea. They entered the territory of Moab and settled there. But Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. Then only she was left, along with her 2 sons. They took wives for themselves, Moabite women. The first of these was Orpah, and the name of the second was Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. But both of the sons, Mahlon and Chilion, also died. Only the woman was left with her 2 children and without her husband. Then she arose along with her daughters-in-law to return to the field of Moab, because while in the territory of Moab she had heard that the Lord had paid attention to his people by providing food for them. She left the place where she had been, and her 2 daughters-in-law went with her. They went along the road to return to the land of Judah. Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, "Go, turn back, each of you, to the household of your mother. May the Lord deal faithfully with you, just as you have done with the dead and with me. May the Lord provide for you so that you may find security, each woman in the household of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. But they replied to her, "No, instead we will return with you to your people." Naomi replied, "Turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Will there again be sons in my womb that would be your husbands for you? Turn back, my daughters. Go. I am too old for a husband. If I were to say that I have hope, even if I had a husband tonight, even more if I were to bear sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you refrain from having a husband? No, my daughters, this is more bitter for me than for you, since the Lord's will has come out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth stayed with her. Naomi said, "Look, your sister-in-law is returning to her people and to her gods. Turn back after your sister-in-law." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to abandon you, to turn back from following you. Wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do this to me, and more so, if even death separates me from you." When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her about it. So both of them went along until they arrived at Bethlehem. When they arrived at Bethlehem, the whole town was excited on account of them. And the woman of the town asked, "Can this be Naomi?" She replied to them, "Don't call me Naomi, but call me Mara, for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has returned me empty. Why would you call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has deemed me guilty?" Thus Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, returned with her from the territory of Moab. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. One of the first questions that I had when I turned back to this was, where is Moab? Where is this land that they went off to seek a better life when there was a famine in the land? And it turns out not very far. What we know in the Middle East as modern day Jordan is the land of Moab that they journeyed to. And as far as genealogically, they were the Moabite people were cousins, so to speak, of the Hebrew people. The main difference between the two peoples is the Hebrew people worshiped God, and the Moabite people were a pagan people, pagan gods. And so we have this story here of going to a foreign land, and the sons taking for themselves wives in this foreign land. It indicates that after they took wives, that there was a period of 10 years before they too died. And during that 10-year period, they did not produce any offspring with these two wives. So there were no grandchildren for Naomi. Doesn't say how long they were there before they took wives, or whether the 10 years was the total span of their being there. That's just a question we don't have an answer for. And as my biblical professor would say, it's not the right question to ask in a situation like this because it doesn't have any bearing on it. The relationship between Ruth and Naomi obviously had become a very close relationship, that they had bonded there. And that caused, into my mind, the question of what was Ruth's relationship with her mother. We don't have any information about that. Here again, it's a question without an answer. But the fact that she bonded so closely with Naomi makes me wonder about her own family relationship, and the fact that she did not want to go back. We do know from the culture of the time that widows had a tough lot in life. Under the Hebrew law, the brother of the man who died was charged with taking the widow as his wife to produce an offspring. In this case, both brothers had died, so there wasn't a brother to step in there.
And the wife didn't have anything to say about it.
That's right. That was just the way things were. So basically, there wasn't any real place for widows. Now, as the story goes on to unfold, there is a twist on this. Only the male heirs could inherit property. Yet, when Ruth goes back to her homeland, there is some property that her husband was the heir to. And the way the story is told in Ruth, there seems to be that Ruth had some claim on this property. So the way that she orchestrates things is that Naomi arranged for Ruth to come to Boaz, a wealthy man in the area, come to his attention, Boaz. What did I say?
I don't know what you said.
Oh, okay. Come to his attention, and then they ultimately marry. But the purpose of the marriage is the inheritance of the property. That Boaz is in some way kin to Naomi's husband, a distant kin, but he's the only one left there. Well, actually, there was another one who was closer in relationship, but when he found out that part of the deal was he had to take Ruth as the Moabite as a wife, he declined, didn't want any part of the deal. But Boaz was struck by Ruth, and he was willing to take Ruth as his wife to inherit the property. As I said, layers within the story here of the inheritance there. And then we get to the end of the story. That, as I said, layers there. That the setting. These are the these are the last verses of the book. These are the generations of Perez. Perez became the father of Hezron. Hezron the father of Ram. Ram the father of Abimelech. Abimelech the father of Nahshon. Nahshon the father of Solomon. Solomon the father of Boaz. Boaz father of Obed. Obed father of Jesse. And Jesse father of David. And so in this story, you catch up on the genealogy that of how things are lining up here. And when we get over to Matthew's gospel, then you find that Joseph is descended from David. The genealogy carries on, and that Joseph is from this line that goes all the way back to this time of Ruth and Boaz here. Where do we go from here? That's a question that many times we are confronted with, sometimes in the face of tragedy, other times in the completion of some part of your life. Throughout my career with Xerox, I spent a lot of time thinking about where do we go from here, thinking of the time after my career with Xerox. And then God stepped in and changed all of that and called me to pastoral ministry. And all the plans that I had made sort of went out the window. There wasn't really room for that inside of God's plan.
That's what you get when you think you're in charge.
We were going to be rich.
And also, where you talk about going from there, Naomi wanted to go back to her roots, to get back to a stable society rather than being a foreign land, not ownership of anything. Husband and sons have died, and so in quote unquote the economy, she was in left field without any resources or whatever. So she wanted to go back to her roots where she knew how things stood, and she knew her town would accept her. All she had to do was try to find somebody that was close in relationship to her husband in order to pick up and establish her lifestyle again and be in a quote safe society.
Somewhat safer society.
Safe, yeah.
Widows still had, even back among Ruth's own people, the life of a widow was still a very hard life. True, she knew what was expected. She knew who the people were, but still the life of the lot of the widow was a very hard life. But like I said, it points to this question of where do we go from here? And that's a question that we're confronted with many times in our life, many times through our journey of faith. When we get to a point and we have to make a decision. Maybe it's a Y in the road where we can go this way or this way, and discerning which way is the path that you should go, which path is God's path. So we'll see where Pastor Dawn has this with our worship later on this morning, and may God's blessings be upon you.